Whoa! Let's begin! Immortal Legacy for Jade Cipher is a single-player FPS game. You play as an ex-Special Forces soldier whose mum died under mysterious circumstances. The game begins with your plane blowing up and you landing on an island. As well as the story being spoken to you during actual gameplay, there are some moments where you will be in a static position, and the story unfolds in front of you in a sort of cutscene. The introduction to the game is very slow paced. I don't mind intros that are slow, but the issue here is that it's just stretched out longer than it needs to be, due to characters' dialogue having pauses. After the initial startup though, these scenes become more entertaining. The game does require 2 move controllers to play, as you use them for each of your arms. There is only snap turning in the game, and it does get in the way of walking down straight and narrow pathways, as sometimes the snap turning will ever so slightly face you towards a wall, so you have to turn your head to walk straight. It does feel unnatural. To actually walk, you hold the move button down, and your speed is incredibly slow. You can run by holding both of the move buttons down at the same time, but the increase in speed is not that much at all. It really is tedious just to move around, especially in the first location in the game, as you can see long pathways right in front of you, and the bland scenery doesn't do much to entertain you during these treks. The image quality is nice and sharp though, and you can rest your real legs during these walks, as you can play the game seated. In the weapons department, there is a lot to keep you entertained. There are so many weapons to use in this game, so many in fact that it would probably be best to list all the ones that it doesn't have. Some of the weapons you get are pistols, Uzis, shotguns, machine guns, and you can throw axes and grenades. But actually launching these from your hands sometimes works and other times it doesn't. It's very inconsistent. To reload a weapon, you simply shake the move controller and it is very responsive. Large weapons can be held with 2 hands, but instead of balancing them with both move controllers, you only use one. It does break the immersion slightly, as one of your virtual hands is no longer controlled by you, but aiming wise, it allows you to be much more precise. You can even use the aid of a holographic sight on one gun. The weapons are stored in an inventory system. You have an inventory for each hand, and you will actually fill both of these up at around the middle of the game, so you will have to choose to remove some to make room for another. These new types of weapons are presented to you very quickly, one after another, at the start of the game. You barely get a chance to get used to them. The pacing of new guns appearing does feel off when compared to other games, but the actual variety here is obviously very welcomed. Enemy variety is also pretty decent. You will face foes such as normal average soldiers, drones that fly above your head, and some can only be permanently killed by using a certain weapon. The AI isn't the best though, and it's most noticeable on enemies that have armour on. These are basically bullet sponges. The real challenge during combat comes from trying to hide behind cover quickly when you're in an open area. The snap turning angle amount, along with your character's movement speed, just makes it a bit of an effort. You can strafe left or right, but choosing to do this instead of actually turning is only best to do so when you have cover to your sides. Pulling off a combo of headshots is a lot of fun though, and waiting for the right moment to shoot a red barrel for a multi-kill explosion is always satisfying. If you do get hurt, you can heal yourself with a syringe. Actually sticking it into your arm does visually look off though, as more often than not, half of the tube will be forced in too. You also have a knife, which can be used to break wood that is blocking your path, or to cut other various things in the world that have a knife indicator on. Just like for weapons, there's a decent amount of variety when it comes to interacting with things with your hands. You can climb ladders and up the side of some cliffs, push open doors that are unlocked, pull switches, and after you have placed C4, you even have to push a button to start the countdown, although the thrill is slightly dampened here as you snap turn and slowly run away. The slow movement isn't always a massive issue throughout the entire game, as the game turns into more of a horror experience when you enter some caves. Here you will use the light from either a handheld torch or a torch that is attached to one of your guns. The actual movement speed here is still the same, but it does feel appropriate for the cramped level layouts and the overall mood the game is going for. There are certainly scary moments lurking around the corners every so often, so you don't really feel the need to rush around them. The game does become a lot more enjoyable here, as some of the negatives of the game are removed. You can slightly forgive the bad AI due to the enemies being monsters that run towards you, so having to awkwardly hide behind cover doesn't really come into play, and the overall pacing of the game during this part is so much better, thanks to the inclusion of basic puzzles to solve. There's quite a few collectibles in the game. Some are story related that come in the form of written documents, and some story snippets are revealed through pocket voice recorders. There's even some collectibles that can be picked up to take a closer look at. At times, it really does feel like an Uncharted or Tomb Raider game when it comes to the collectibles. Some of the collectibles require you to solve a mini puzzle that appear as a boxed ball maze. Surprisingly, this works very well with the Move controller's motion sensor, and they are fun to solve, for the first few times at least, as just like the weapons appearing a lot at the beginning of the game, these boxed puzzles appear in very quick succession, and the joy does start to fade quite quickly. There are some boss battles in the game, but be warned, you will be fighting with your movement controls when up against some of them. They're the cause of some of the most frustrating moments in the game, and there is a couple here that you face that I doubt many will bother getting past. The game took me around 4 hours to beat, but now I'm going to do something that I don't usually do in my reviews, and that is tell you the time it takes to beat each section of the game, so you can decide whether or not the good parts are worth the hassle. The tedious introduction took me about an hour and 20 minutes to beat. The best part of the game, when it turns to horror, took me about an hour and a half to beat, and the final act, where you face a few frustrating bosses, took me about an hour. Trophy wise, the game has a massive list and it does come with a platinum, but unfortunately, I have no idea if this is going to be a hard platinum to get or not, as the descriptions of a lot of the trophies don't guide you too well at all. Some of the trophies even popped up for me when I simply took a different route through a level, so if you don't inspect each level's layout a lot, you're going to have an incredibly tough time with trophy cleanup at the end of the game. It's certainly a game where most gamers will want to take a look at a trophy guide. Now, I have mentioned the walking speed numerous times through this review, and that's because it really does hurt the game a lot. It really does affect so many gameplay elements in a negative way. I imagine it was either done to extend the game's length or to prevent motion sickness. Either way, improving these things really isn't worth the impact it's caused throughout the game. In the end, I didn't even bother searching for collectibles, as I knew I would have to slowly walk back along a path that I had already come down. What the game does best is the interaction with your hands. It's exactly what I want from an FPS VR game. It really does immerse you so much and grounds you in the world as the actual person you're playing as. Overall, it really comes down to if you can put up with a tedious introduction to get to the good stuff, but be warned, even then you're not in the clear, as the ending part will leave you feeling very frustrated, which is a shame, as there are some good FPS game mechanics here, and a lot of them, which is something that we rarely see for the game's asking price. If you want to see whether or not you can put up with the first part of the game, there is a video of part of it on screen right now. As always, if you found this review helpful, please give the thumbs up button a quick click, as it really does help the channel grow.